Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
DC Comics and chocolate milkshake. Some things will always be great. DC Comics and chocolate milkshake. Even though I'm 28.
Who to be a referee? Get him off, get him up. With a whistle and a little dried up pea.
Well, hello again, and welcome to episode 154 of There's Still Time, the AFTN podcast. I'm Michael McCall.
And I'm Steve Pander.
And we're trying to be upbeat because anyone that watched Whitecaps play at DC on Saturday, it was hard to be upbeat after that. But we're going to try and be focused and upbeat until we start talking about the game.
Which is right now.
And we're going to do things a little bit different in this episode of the podcast. It's going to be basically split into two parts. The first part, we're going to talk about Whitecaps, WFC2. And then the second half of the podcast, going to play quite a lengthy conference call that a number of reporters had with Peter Walton from Pro. I just feel it's important to get that out there so that fans can hear it. You'll have read some of the comments through a number of different articles that journalists have written. I just feel it's important for fans and also for players just to kind of hear what Pro's take is on the start to the season, all the red cards, the disciplinary action taken, stuff like that. So we're going to have that in the second half of the show. But let's not put it off any longer. Let's talk not too much, I don't think, because it's quite depressing if we do. Whitecaps went to DC, obliterated by a DC United team that were winless going into the game, were struggling. We talked about it in the podcast last week. This was a game that the Whitecaps could very easily have gone and won. Instead, they suffered one of their worst defeats in the MLS era, 4-0 thrashing, and they put in one of the worst performances I think we've seen under Carl Robinson's tenure. Yeah,
and it was definitely worse than that performance in 2011 when they visited there. I think they lost 3-0, and I think it was Jay Nolly's last appearance as a Whitecap. He had a horrible game, opposite to this one where everybody else had a horrible game and the goalkeeper was the only shining light in there. It's really a big thing when your goalkeeper, you allow 4 goals and your goalkeeper gets named man of the match. That's a very telling tale of how that game went.
Oh, and for sure, it's like if Ousted had not made a couple of huge saves in the first half in particular, I mean, that could have been 6, 7, 8-0, and it was embarrassing enough at 4. I mean, the Whitecaps' attitude is, yeah, they know it was a bad game, dust themselves down. They don't get hung up on losses.
No, that's the way you have to be. If you do get hung up on that loss, then you're not going to. There's no point in even playing the next game. You might as well get a whole different starting 11, which I'm sure some people online are suggesting to do. But I think that you have to dust it off, take it as what it is, and then move on to the next one. Which obviously makes me sound like I'm part of the coaching staff, but no, that's just the way it is. You have to do that. And
it would be remiss of us if we didn't mention that part of the reason for the defeat was that the Whitecaps were missing a number of key starters. Otavio Rivero, Pedro Morales, Christian Bolaños, they were all injured. Nicolas Mosqueda as well was injured and couldn't play in the number 10 role. You had Matthias Laba that was suspended. There's been a lot of talk that the Whitecaps' depth this year is much better, and it is much better. But I think we saw it last year as well. The depth is good, but if you make too many changes at once, the team just can't function.
Yeah, it falls apart. And the also other problem is when you have certain injuries in one position, or when you have a lot of players absent from that one position, you're forced to play like a player that doesn't really play. Like, for example, one of the guys that really struggled and was substituted at the halftime was Marco Bustos, who is a number 10, essentially. Doesn't play wing very often, if at all. I honestly don't remember the last time he played. Maybe it was in a game and when he came on as a sub or something like that. Maybe he played wing there. But I think that was probably took him out of the game. Wingers normally or you have to be very cognizant of keeping them in the game. And when you have a young player who never played out there, it's reasonable to understand that maybe he got lost in the game.
Yeah, I mean, Bustos was taken off at half-time. Carl Robinson said at training today, Tuesday, that it wasn't a slight on his performance. It's just he had to freshen things up because they were down. It was a 4-4-2 formation that he went with. It was kind of all over the pitch, so it was really hard to tell who was meant to be playing where, really. And there was a couple of breaks that the Whitecaps were going forward, and you had Kudo and Perez up there, and Teixeira, and then Jacobson was up there, and you're looking around, and then Bustos wasn't on the break, so you're wondering, where was he? And it's like, it just was a mess.
Because the other thing is with wingers too, is like he probably was being told, prior to the game, because the new position for him, like we said, you have make sure you take responsibility defensively and this and that, and I think that probably got in his head maybe, and maybe he wasn't able to get up in the attack. And then another thing is this probably affected another player who had I don't want to say a bad game. He's probably been one of the better defenders, but Jordan Harvey, because he's got a young guy playing in front of him in the first half, and he's got to be aware of him, and then he's playing next to Parker. So I think that probably had a lot to do with his off game. Not trying to make excuses for them, but that's probably another thing that happened there.
Yeah, but we'll come into the defence shortly. Up front, we got to see the striking partnership that a lot of us have been excited to see as to what they could produce. Blas Perez, Masato Kudo, both of them pretty poor. I have to say as well, there was a point in the second half, Masato Kudo just appeared on the edge of the box in a break, and I was like, oh yeah, Kudo's playing, because I'd completely forgotten by that point. Kudo just had a really bad game. Perez didn't really have much of a good game either. There just seemed to be no spark, no creative spark. Kikuta Mane had a couple of runs in the second half. They brought Eric Hurtado on. He hit the post, then whiffed a shot right in front of an empty net that he should have put away. Hurtado's not a guy that you want to bring on when you're 2 goals down and you're trying to chase a game. It was clear that the missing players was a big part in that, but just the whole attack. And
there was no creativity in the lineup. Like you said, there was no Morales, there was no Bolaños. Those 2 guys are probably your more creative guys. And then on top of that, another guy who really struggled, I thought, was Teixeira. I was like, what's going on with him? He's not buzzing in around the net. Maybe he thought because there's 2 strikers in the box, he didn't need to go in there. But why not a bunch of more people in there? And he wasn't really delivering the ball either.
It just felt that the team didn't really know what they were meant to be doing out there. And the good news going ahead to the upcoming game against RSL is that training today on Tuesday, Bolaños, Mosqueda and Morales were all doing laps, not playing in the scrimmage, so the chances of, well, Pedro's definitely going to be out, but the chances of Bolaños and Mosquito being fit for this weekend look slim. Robbo's not ruling it out, so you never know. The Octavio Rivero, though, was on the pitch running around, so I think he's going to be back in the team. But it does seem to be a case, no matter who's playing up front, no matter what combination, no matter what formation, they just can't unlock the goals. They just can't put the ball in the back of the net.
And then I think in the presser they had with Rob, and you can probably see this on the Whitecaps site, you asked the question about at this point, is there anything to change, or do you just keep plugging along? He obviously answered it. I think he caught the formation part of the question, and he just went off on that, so he didn't really answer it properly. Yeah, but what do you think? Is it? I think it's just a matter of plugging on at this point. Is like if you keep changing things over and over again, I think the players, we've always said the players aren't the brightest people in the world. I'm not saying our Whitecaps, but other players. Do you really want to keep making changes and then confuse them even more?
I mean, it's tough because they've tried so many different formations. I would like to see Rivero and Perez kind of persistent for a few games just to see what we can get out of them together as a working unit. Robos feels that it's just going to take a bit of luck to change it. A ball off a bum, ball off the side of a head, just a scrambled goal, and he feels that once the goals are coming, like what you said last week, Steve, once the goals start to come, then the floodgates might open. I'm just not so confident about that.
I'm not confident this week, especially against RSL. Well, one thing, I'm confident against RSL because RSL has, while they are undefeated, they do give up a lot of goals on average. Like the first game of the season when they were up 2-0 and they gave up 2 goals in injury time to Orlando, that was a big one. They gave up 2 goals to Portland and a couple other games like that. So they are susceptible to giving up goals, but when you're playing in RSL in the altitude and sometimes the humidity there, it's going to be tough there.
I like looking ahead to the game then at the weekend. As you say, it's going to be a tough one. RSL, unbeaten at the moment, second in the table, looking good, looking strong, a lot stronger than I thought they were going to be this year, and I think a lot of folk didn't expect them to do so well. Still early days, of course. Utah is always a tough place to go and play. They've been doing better in recent years down there. I think if they can even get a point from this game, they're going to be happy with that. I mean, formation-wise, it's hard to know because we don't really know who's going to be fit, but I mean, what would you like to see ideally? We know Morales is going to be out. It looks like Bolaños is also going to be out. Not 100% sure Mosquita's going to make it as well, but I mean, what do you think that they're going to do? Is this a game that Robbo might write off and give a few guys chances? Like, he might rest Jordan Harvey. We talked about he didn't have his best game. Maybe he'll rest him, give Sam Adekugbe his chance. Fraser Aird struggled at times. Maybe Jordan Smith will come in for this one. Laba's back at least.
Laba's back. I think what you do, personally, what I would do is have Laba play with Tiber. Get Tiber back in the game, see what he can show you. I know he struggled. Obviously, we talked about that too. He struggled mightily in that game. But I think you put them together because they played together before. Have Jacobson ready to come off the bench if they need him. And then on the back end, I agree with you. I'd probably maybe put Sam in at this point, and then have Jordan ready to play at home. But I think you still go with Fraser. I would like to keep plugging him in and see what he can show you after a tough game again. I don't like young players. I don't like taking them out after a difficult game unless they're like down the pecking order, like Bustos. He's obviously not high up on the roster right now, so that's not a big deal. But Fraser's your starter. Keep him as your starter, even if he had a difficult game.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And I would probably go with giving Sam a little run out in this one, just give Harvey a little bit of a rest. I think he's going to go with 4-4-2 again. I disagree with you. I wouldn't keep Tybert. I know Tybert and Laba played last season, but for me, Laba's going to play the DM role, and I think Jacobson perfectly fits playing a DM-CM role in a 4-4-2, just because he has an attacking quality that Tybert just seems to have lost altogether.
Yeah, we were talking about before we started recording, there was that one year with Camilo where he was providing quite a bit of attack. He scored a goal against LA.
Couple.
Yeah, so
lots assists galore.
Yeah, assists galore. So I don't know what it is. Maybe they're just trying to pigeonhole him into a DM role, and he feels like he shouldn't go forward because he might open up the attack. I'm not sure why he doesn't go forward. But if you're like we were saying 4-4-2, would you think a diamond would be better? That way you have somebody up there supporting the strikers directly instead of, because Laba by himself at the back, I think he's more than capable, unless he flings himself at somebody at a ball or whatever and gets somebody. I think he's more than capable of holding it own.
The problem is who would play at the top of the diamond, really.
Jacobson, maybe.
Well, yeah, I guess you could have Teixeira. I think if Mosquita is fit, he's going to go with his trusty 4-2-3-1 with Mosquita in the number 10 role. I mean, you could risk Teixeira doing the number 10 role, but I just don't think that would work. I think the players aren't going to be good to start. I think we'll see 4-4-2. I think we'll see Teixeira as one of the wingers, and I think he'll just go with Mane as well. The options are looking a little bit grim, I have to say, for this one.
What about Keon Froese? I thought he came off the bench pretty solidly. I know he's coming off an injury still, so but maybe throw him in there. He's had a history of playing in altitude. Maybe he can do something there as well. He might be an option to play alongside Laba.
Let's talk about the defence. They were cut open for 3 of the 4 goals on Saturday. The second goal, Birnbaum out-jumped Tim Parker at a corner, crashed his header off the bar, fell beautifully right in front for Espindola. He couldn't miss from there and buried it high into the net. That was the only one of the 4 goals that, I mean, folk did criticise Parker. They thought he should have out-jumped Birnbaum, but it's like, I don't put a lot of blame in that. The other 3 goals, along with some of the saves that Ousted had to make, the defence was cut wide open, a lot of it down Fraser Aird's side, but also in the middle of the park. Parker and Waston were torn apart by the speed of the DC players. And I know the last 2 goals, they were trying to push to get something, so they left themselves short at the back. Yeah. But they were getting cut open. There was a lot of balls. What I noticed in the first half in particular, DC were attacking up Aird's flank, hitting the byline, cutting it back into the penalty spot, and there's always a player there that was unmarked. Yeah. And if it wasn't for Ousted making a couple of saves, there'd have been a few more. But it's like a couple of the goals came through that middle where Waston and Parker were kind of all at sea.
Yeah, it was clearly that they must have scouted that Montreal game by doing that tactic. They were because that the way you described it is clearly that's the way Montreal attacked Fraser, and that's the way they attacked him.
And we've given kudos, not Masato, but we've given kudos to Aird for getting better and better every game. But it is clear that teams still see that as the weak side to attack on the Whitecaps' defence. But I think, as much as I like Tim Parker and as much as I like Kendall Waston and I like that pairing, is there concerns that it's not the first time this year that we've seen the middle of the park, kind of the middle of the defence torn open? Should he look at maybe bringing Ka back beside Waston? Because the pair of them last year were pretty formidable together.
While everybody's talking about, they've only given up a certain goals and they had 2 clean sheets in a row, one of those was the one where Ka was leading the back line, essentially. So maybe it is time to go back to them. I don't know if you want to do that against RSL, where Ka is maybe not 100% fit, and that could, make him not be the ideal person. Maybe they stick with Parker Waston one more time, and maybe it was that's one question for you. We're talking about the center backs in the middle of the pitch. How much did that have to do with Jacobson and Tybert's partnership in front of them, and whether they protected him or not fully, and the fact that those two played for the first time ever together, and Tybert's first game of the season?
Yeah, it could be that, and Laba being out was obviously a big thing in the game. So, it might be better with Laba back there. I just think it's going to be tough against a really dangerous RSL side. And as I mentioned, one of the things the Whitecaps are struggling with this year is the cut back from the byline and also dealing with fast players. And you've got Plata that's on fire this season for RSL. It's a bit of a worry. How do you see the game playing out? I'm not hopeful for this at all.
No, it's going to be tough for them to get it. Ideally, you want to just get a result. You want to get a draw. Try to get one draw out of the 2 games, and then try to regroup for the home games at that point.
I've written this one off. I'm going to go... I think it's going to be another defensive horror show. Mm-hmm. I still don't see that the attack's going to click. Even if you play Perez and Rivero up front, it's like where the creativity is going to be with all these guys out. I'm going to go for a 3-0 RSL win.
I'll go 1-0 loss.
So we're all doom and gloom, but
which means they might win.
Yeah, but it's usually if I'm pessimistic, they win. So watch for the stunning fight back from the Caps this week. Let's raise the doom and gloom a little bit. Let's talk about the other Whitecaps teams. Residency, a fantastic weekend of results. They drew with Seattle at under 18s and they beat Seattle at under 16. The 18s now unbeaten in 23 matches.
And from the looks of it, and they're a very young team because a lot of their players, like if you think of the club's missing players, they're missing quite a few players that would normally play on them. You got Alphonso Davies, Thomas Gardner, Caden Chung that are playing with the WFC2, and they got a lot of young players on that U18 team. So it's very impressive the way their results are, and obviously the 16s. The Whitecaps seem to always have a strong 16s. They always seem to have something going on there, and they're always a strong lineup going on.
And a lot's been made about Alphonso Davies, and he's moved up to WFC2, but Alan Camacho is on fire for the 16s.
It's a good thing they haven't missed him at all. So,
and we mentioned WFC2 there. Unbeaten start to the season still. 3 games, in fact, unbeaten all year because they were unbeaten in 6 games in pre-season. Yeah. But they've started the USL season with 2 wins and a really gutsy draw against Sacramento Republic, who are one of the favourites, I think, to win the USL Championship this year. And Don Garber going there on Thursday to discuss the MLS possibilities. And watch for a piece on USLsoccer.com. I spoke to Republic head coach Paul Buckle after the game, so there's going to be a piece on that. And Buckle described his Republic team as being a scalp for a number of teams. And yeah, it's maybe a bit big-headed, but it is also true they are one of the big teams in the league. And Alan Koch has used them as a measuring stick, and he was delighted that his young side, a side with 3 teenagers starting, one of them was Debbie Flores, but still 3 teenagers, that they battled to 0-0 draw. They were a little bit under the cosh in the second half, but they had a goal disallowed that should have stood. And I think one of the most pleasing aspects from WFC2 this year is how they've shored up the defence. They've had 2 clean sheets now and just conceded 1 goal in all 3 games. Sacramento actually haven't given up a goal all season, so you can't even knock the strikers for not getting a goal on Sunday. But the defence has really shored up well, and one of the key players behind that is the 21-year-old Dutchman that they brought in, Sem de Wit. He's played every minute of every game so far. He's been outstanding. He looks a great talent and a great prospect for the MLS team. And some of you might have read my interview with Sem on AFTN last week. We're going to play it for you now because it's good to hear from him. I think he's going to be a good prospect. He's a name you need to know and a name to watch out for. So let's hear now from WFC2's Dutch centre-back, Sem de Wit. Sem, you've been here a couple of weeks now, well, I guess 2 months now. How have you found the whole environment in Vancouver, both playing-wise and also just the city being in a new city?
It's great actually, now with the sun. No, it's yeah. Great. It's a great city. It's I feel it feels like home now, you know? Like first few weeks was like get used to everything. Now with the team, we do well and we win 2 in a row, and the team is good. I think we're all good with each other. We train well every day. We try to get better every day. So yeah, this is like it's good. I feel like it feels good here. Yeah.
Coming over here from Europe, it's strange for a young guy like yourself to come over, because usually it's guys when they're older, and a lot of the young guys here want to go and play in Europe, like Holland, Germany, stuff like that. What was behind the move here? Why did you want to come?
I think I was ready for an adventure. I played 3 years in Holland. wasn't a big success. So I think I was ready for an adventure, and this came on my path. And I did the trial in November, and it goes well. The club told me I can stay here, so I was like, I thought about it, like good chat with my parents, with my brother, everything, and I think it was a good move to come here, like on this age. I'm just turned 21. It's a huge experience for me, like good adventure, like I told you, far from home. I deal with it and I do well so far. So yeah, I think it's so far it's good. Yeah.
One of the things I read about you, I don't know if it was true or not, was that you were kind of scouted because they'd seen your YouTube video. Is that true, or?
It is like an agent in America. He saw my video like on YouTube. He saw my video and he contacted my brother, and he has some contacts with the coach. And they saw my video, and there was like, I think that was enough for a trial. And in the trial you have to improve yourself. So yeah, that was kind of thing, like that was the thing with YouTube. Yeah.
And you've played 2 games now in the league. How have you found the level compared to what you've been used to over in Holland?
It's good. I was a bit surprised. Like in the pre-season, with all respect, we played like the universities. Yeah. So when you play like the first game against Orange County, you have to get used to it. The first 10 minutes, it's a different level. They're big and they're strong and athletic, and yeah, it was. I think it's a good level, like especially for young guys like you. With WFC2, you can do. Yeah, if you do well, you can make the step or not. You know, or I think it's a good start for a young player, for young players. Or like now, some players from the first team came down. They do a great job with us, and you see they're motivated. They want to play. Like you see they're good with us. They train well, and that's like, I think that's important. Like if everyone does well, like the level is getting higher and higher, and the league is. I think it's a good level. Yeah.
And the way that this team is, you're going to be playing beside different people. Sometimes every week's going to be like a different lineup. Yeah. So you were beside Jackson for the first game and then Cole for the second. Yeah. How difficult is it to kind of adjust to getting to know a partner in such a short time?
I think it's part of your job. I mean, like you train with the guys all the time, so it doesn't really matter if you play. Like next week I play with Jackson. The next week Jackson maybe plays with Cole, or I play with Cole, or I play with I don't know who else. But I think you get used to it. Like if they come, it's not that bad. Like Cole, he trains like a lot with us. Yeah. In the preseason, I played some games with him, and I played some games with Jackson, and yeah, I think it's not a big deal. You get used to it like pretty soon. When the game starts, it's all like the same. Yeah.
And obviously, the way that this club is set up, there's a clear path to MLS. If you do well here, you've got a good chance. But it's different in Europe, whereas you can't just do well in the reserves and then all of a sudden they'll call you up because you have to have your MLS contract.
Yeah.
But knowing that the club has that path and that there's an MLS club, was that a key part of your decision to come here?
Yeah, like end of the day, my dream is to play in the MLS. You start with in the USL and you try to make the step to the MLS. That's like what every young player wants to do. Yeah, well, if you do well, maybe they give you. If you like, it's like it's everywhere. Like in Europe, it's in here. Like if you do well, you get your chance. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to. The only thing you have to do is like train every day as hard as possible. Like try to get better every day. Play well every game. So end of the day, that you can look in the mirror and you're like, yeah, I did everything to do what I can to make the MLS. And if it's not work out, yeah, I did everything I could.
Growing up in the Dutch system, because everyone knows about the Dutch system, it's really good. What was it like coming through as a youth player? Like, obviously you don't know what it's like here, but like, what kind of skills do you feel that you really learned coming through the youth system in Holland?
Well, in Holland you learn everyone in Holland is good on the ball, and I think that's a huge win for me here. Like I'm good on the ball and I can defend well, and if you're good on the
headers too, because I watched you in training last week and you were burying lots of headers.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I win a lot of headers. It's I don't know. Yeah. You learn like how to deal with the ball, and as a centre back, I'm good with the ball. I think that's a great win for me. Like that's a strong point for me, and because if you want to play like how the Whitecaps want to play is like they want to try to play through the lines, like through not the long ball. So I think that's a good thing for me. Like I can play from the back and start at some good place, Yeah.
Well, thanks for speaking to me,
and
good luck with everything.
Yeah.
So Sem de Wit there, definitely a guy to watch, as I say. Any final comments on WFC2 from you, Steve?
No, I think the thing is they're still missing one of their top players from last year, Blasco. He's injured still, and another top player from them, McKendry, is still coming back from injury too. So I think you add those two guys in there. I think this could be a very exciting year for them. At this point, especially with the strikers they have up top, I see them making the playoffs for sure. And I think we'll see playoff football in WFC2.
I do as well, and Alan's telling everyone not to get carried away, and it is all about development, but you develop by winning, and by winning, it just builds great players, and I'm really, really confident that this team can go far and go deep this year, and we'll get a good test against OKC Energy on Sunday night. If you're free, get up to Thunderbird Stadium, 7 o'clock kick-off, and there's going to be a kind of fire display afterwards, so get out for that.
Fire or fireworks?
Let's hope it's the good kind of fireworks on the pitch. So that's our Whitecaps talk for this episode. So as I said at the start of the show, going to play quite a lengthy bit from Peter Walton now. So if you're not interested in this, you can just switch off, but I think you should be.
25 minutes or so, right?
Yep, 25 minutes. It's from a conference call that Peter Walton did with a number of top journalists last week. I wasn't on the call, I couldn't make it. But I managed to get hold of some of the audio, and I've edited out a lot of the pleasantries and just who the folk were asking the questions, and cut it down from about 55 minutes down to this 25, just to kind of really deal with the salient points. But I do feel that it's something that the fans should hear exactly Pro's version of what's going on with officiating this year. So no more waffle from me, let's get straight to it. Let's hear now from Pro's Peter Walton.
Who to be a referee? Get him off, get him up. With a whistle and a little dried up pea. It's no protection for all the things they throw. Toilet rolls and bottles every time I blow.
I thought that it'd be appropriate at this stage of the season just to update everybody as to where Pro is and what's happening for 2016. And it would seem that referees are player of the month, and that's something I don't want them to be, because the game's about the players and not the referees. So I just thought I'd share with you some of the points that we're going through. Indeed, you've seen this year an insight into the serious foul play and the actions our referees have taken on that, and I'll touch on that a little bit later in my discussion. In terms of Pro itself, and a quick brief overview of Pro, really, we have made progress in our company in terms of the referees are getting better each year, and I have the data to provide and furnish with that. So it's not just a perception, there's a factual element to this as well. When Pro started some 2013, we had 2 full-time referees, some of you may remember that, 2 full-time referees servicing Major League Soccer, accompanied by some 37 or so independent contractors. And what we found when I got here was that there was far too many referees to furnish the few games that we had at the time, and each referee was getting around sort of 10 games per person. That was reduced in terms of the numbers of officials, but in fact what we did was we created a pool of full-time referees supplemented by part-time referees. So now we have 13 full-time referees and 10 part-time referees, and each referee attracts, on average, obviously around about 15 games a season, although the best performers get many more games than the people who are finding life a little bit difficult, or in fact are part of that development side of things. In terms of their training and education as well, again, when we started, would you believe the referees got together as a collective body twice a season? And you can imagine one of our coaches getting his team together twice a season. It's just a non-starter. And that was a real a vacuum to be filled. And now we get our guys together some 18, 19 times a season, every 2 weeks, collectively to talk and digest the game and the matches and the players that we've seen. In terms of the analysis of their performances, we have a thorough analysis of their performances done by technology, done by independent assessors, and together we have some feedback as well from our key stakeholders, from the NASL, from the USL, and indeed from Major League Soccer, about how they consider performances, and they go all into the pot to ascertain how our referees are performing match by match. In terms of that technology that we use as well, we are using GPS tracking now for our referees, and that way we can see the distance they're running, the distance they're from fouls, and whether or not they're in the right positions, etc. And this goes hand in hand with their fitness program and their data program as we see it. In terms of how we then collect our data, we use a company called Simpsons. Some of you may know Simpsons. Simpsons actually work for the NFL and the English Premier League, collecting similar data to what they collect from our guys. And that data really goes through their decision making on a event per event basis. In other words, if they got every foul correct, if they got every offside correct, if they got every throw-in correct, the goal kick, corner kick, you name it, we collect the data on it to ensure that we can track themes and we can track individuals who perhaps need some development in various places. Or indeed, we can track best practice as well, which is also part of our analysis. And in terms of the fitness of our referees, again, some of you may well know, we employ a full-time sports scientist, and his role really is to get our guys fit for purpose. Yes, they are fit, and yes, there's many people fit, but are they fit for purpose? And we're finding now that we need to fine-tune our guys in terms of their dynamic running, their dynamic sprinting, their positional plays, etc. And that's born through, obviously, the GPS tracking, but also through our sports scientist and his program. In terms of the consistency nature, the mere fact that we hold some 19 camps per season really brings our group together collectively. And when they're together collectively, we discuss plays, we digest and dissect plays. And so we're now beginning to see a lot more consistency between individuals. What you won't see, of course, is that 100% consistency, because basically they're human beings and it's a subjective sport. But hopefully what we'll be seeing is a more consistent message throughout one game by one referee, so people are aware of what's happening. And when it comes to the big calls, they should be treated the same in terms of the application of any disciplinary measures or of that nature. And going into 2016, we are seeing, as you well know, an increase in our red card situation through serious foul play. And this is nothing new. This has been really on the agenda since 2012, ever since those 4 days of 2011 when a number of the key players in MLS suffered significant injuries. And it was then that it was felt that perhaps we need to act on some of those challenges that will impact the game and will impact our individuals. So we're really now looking at those challenges, and that's been going on now for some 3 years. It's only because we've now got the analytical tools, we've got the tracking devices, and we can see that last year we got 72% of our red card correct, which sounds good, but actually it means we were missing 28%. And when we delved into those 28% that we were missing, it was really down to poor positioning, poor movement on behalf of the referees. I think it's some 84% or so were missed because of that respect. That gave us the initiative then and gave us the data to really get home on it. And what we see now is that our referees are applying law as law is written and looking at these challenges. And that's one of the reasons why red cards are increasing, because our referees now are detecting and punishing, as they should do in law, those types of challenges. In fact, with the actual red card situation, the counts, and I'm sure you're all aware of the statistics, is not too far removed from where we were last year. It just means that there are more red cards, straight red cards, rather than red cards as the consequence of 2 yellow cards. So we are now punishing the offence as it should be. And I think over a period of time, players and coaches will modify their behaviour so that they are in sync with the laws of the game, and it is being played as the law is described. And what we'll see, I think, is a levelling off of disciplinary matters, and in fact, we'll see a slight change in the way and the style that we see Major League Soccer being played in.
You know, how do you decide what the standard is for a red card? I mean, I know the laws of the game are a basis for that, but do you look at the way games are being called in other leagues around the world to kind of establish that?
Now, in terms of what we look for, yes, you're quite right. Serious foul play is defined in law. It's defined, but of course leaves it very subjective as well. One of the defining parts are that a player lunges at an opponent, and we take that into consideration, of course. But there are other aspects that we take into consideration when we're looking at serious foul play. One is the speed of the challenge. One is the force behind the challenge. A straight leg or 2-legged challenge. 4 legs off the ground where the player is clearly not in control of his body, and where on the body there's contact of the opponent. So there's a number of tick boxes there that Pro advocates as a red card challenge. In terms of looking around the world, yes, I do. I watch a lot of soccer around the world, and I was most disappointed that West Ham won their appeal on the send-off from last Saturday. That, for me, I'm sure some of you out there have seen that challenge. West Ham played Crystal Palace, and Coyote, I think is the guy's name, was sent off, in my opinion, quite correctly. That, of course, was overturned by the Football Association of England, but that's down to them. As far as I'm concerned, that type of challenge in North America is not the type of challenge that we want in our game, and will be punished with a red card. In terms of other leagues, I will look at my major stakeholders, and I will look at the way that Pro wants that game to be fashioned. And I think that for protection of players, for protection of skillful players, it is the right way to go and be strong and tough on offences that could endanger the safety of opponents.
Am I right in saying then that the bar on what a serious foul play is has not been raised, that the referees are just, in your view, now just calling the letter of the law correctly. Is that fair to say?
Neil, that's spot on. Absolutely bang on. I couldn't have explained it better to me. Nothing has changed in law. Nothing has changed in the way that Pro wants the game to be played and administered. What has changed is our referees are much more consistent in the application of the law that I want them to apply.
And then I take it you feel, if I'm also getting you correct, you feel that the players, while they may be a little confused now because it's changed, the calling of things have changed slightly from last season, that they will get used to this, and you have told them that they have to. Is that correct?
We as an organisation met with all the clubs, the coaching staff and the players pre-season. We do this every year, and as part of that meeting we show various clips of the games in previous seasons and talk it through how the players and the coaches, how pro referees or assistants will officiate that game. And it really should not be a surprise to people when they see players being dismissed for the challenges that we've seen in the first 4 weeks of this season. What we've done in the past is not get that consistency between our referees. And I spent a considerable amount of time with the refereeing group pre-season, going through plays, going through various examples from previous season, talking to them so they understood. And what you're seeing now is that application being consistently applied. Will the players modify their behaviour? I think they will. Will it change the course of the game and affect the game? I don't think it will change that much of the game. It will certainly make the game, I think, more entertaining because the skill factors being able to flourish. But I do think that the players will slightly modify their behaviour, not by much, because physical contact in the game of soccer is still within the law, and I still expect challenges to be made and tackles to be made. What I do expect are players just to have in the back of their mind that they shouldn't make such challenges because they stand the risk of receiving a red card.
Peter, just wondering what kind of feedback you got from the players and coaches when you guys had the meetings during preseason. Was there any pushback from them or any concerns relating to this? Because if you are just applying the law as they're written, it would seem that there wouldn't be much room for confusion for the players and coaches to have this much kind of fight back and feedback through the media recently.
Reality is this. When we speak to players and coaches in the comforts of a hotel in January, what we show them, I think, makes complete sense, and they absorb it and take it in and understand and agree. When it manifests itself on a field in March and April, it's a different feeling, and so the players understood, and the players agree amongst themselves that certain challenges that we saw, and they all gasp and they all intake of breath when we show such challenges. They understand that. But when they're down on that field and they're at work and they're focused on the game and they're doing what they think is the right thing to do, sometimes that gets a bit lost in their mindset. And I think that, again, if we took them collectively into a room now and showed them the games, again, I think the same reaction would be from them, Kirk, and that is, yeah, we get it, we understand it. When it's applied in action, it becomes slightly more hard to accept and slightly more hard to absorb. But again, I'll go back to say that if players continue making such challenges, referees will continue making such decisions. And I do think that given time, it will be modified.
And I wonder also your thoughts on the MLS Disciplinary Committee administering further punishment to some of these calls that, maybe were given yellow cards during a game and then are changed to red cards after the fact.
Well, the strapline for you is my job is to put the disciplinary committee out of work. I want my referees to get every decision right, so that if we don't have the disciplinary committee meeting on a Monday or Tuesday, which is quite separately to the referees. And that is something that has been my mantra for the last 2 or 3 years and will continue to be so. And the less the DC do, the more my referees pick up, or the more the players modify behaviour on the field of play. And so we go hand in hand. But of course, we both know that referees won't pick up everything. The TV cameras don't lie, and the angles don't lie. And of course, there's no hiding place now for players who transgress, and the disciplinary committee will pick the bits that fall through the cracks.
You've spoken about the players needing to adjust. What about the referees and how long you expect it to take for them to get used to it? And I'll just reference the weekend. I mean, for fans watching, when they see certain players get sent off on the Saturday and then Brek Shea stay in the game on the Sunday, everyone's left scratching their heads. Obviously these decisions impact the games. I mean, Shea goes and scores goals. So how many weeks realistically do you think it's going to take until referees get used to what is a red and what's not? And a quick follow-up after that is, is there not concern that they start erring on the side of more reds with borderline stuff because they don't want to get shown up on the Wednesday by the disciplinary committee? And like you say, future assignments are in jeopardy, their paychecks are in jeopardy if they don't get it right. Is there not a concern that will lead to, if they're not sure, whereas perhaps they might before have not called something, that now you're going to see more straight reds because of that?
Yeah, I mean, two good questions. By the way, it's a great goal from Brek Shea. I was at the game. And I don't think anybody will stop that one. But you're quite right, and that's the consistency in that manner. And I can't be prescriptive and say it'll be 3 weeks, it'll be 2 weeks, because you know that this is a subjective game. What we are looking for is to bring those margins of error together so that we don't see big, wide gaps. In terms of Brek Shea, again, subjective viewpoint. Kelly, the referee, had a great view of it and thought it was a yellow card. In hindsight, it may well have been a red card. But going back to your question, I think over the past 4 weeks, we've had 13 different referees send off players. And that, for me, shows that the group itself is beginning to understand and realise it's not just 1 or 2 referees going in there like a sheriff. It's 13 referees across the group recognising challenges and deal with them as we ask them to deal with. Whether or not the referees will modify their behaviour, well, I think that the referees will continue doing what they feel is correct, with the players having to modify themselves. In terms of when you said about erring on the side of red cards, don't forget that we look at all these red cards, and I've personally looked at all 16 red cards this season, 13 of which have been, my English term is nailed on, 13 which I think everybody would give a red card to, and there's 3 where you debate. I accept that, that's part of the game. But also, if those red cards are issued and they're wrongly issued, then that referee suffers as a consequence of that. If they're erring on the side of a red card just because they think that they may well be downgraded, that's not actually true. What they're doing is making sure that the decision they give is the correct decision. Because if it's the wrong decision for either not giving it or giving it, then they will suffer for it. So it is pressure on the referees, but that's the life of a referee. That's the life of the coach. It's results driven. That's the life of the player. It's goals scored or save made. Referees are just the same, and they want to get that decision correct on the day.
Peter, you talk about how the referees and pro get in a meeting with the team early in the season, during pre-season. Is any plan to do it during the season again, like refreshing concepts and all that?
The answer to that is yes, and that's something that has been missing. What we've been doing in previous seasons is to meet up with the clubs pre-season, and then part of my management team, or one of my management team, would then go into the club during the season to talk in general terms. We've seen and we've felt that we're missing an element here, and that should be taking an active referee as well as a support manager into the club, maybe just to share some training with them, or share some time with the clubs to reiterate messages, to understand the feedback we're getting from clubs, and to just take a check mark to say where we're going. And so what we will be seeing this season, post July the 4th, is a whistle-stop tour of our clubs, with an active referee, just to understand where we are and to give them the opportunity, them being the clubs and the players, the opportunity outside of that pressure situation of match days, of meeting up with somebody from the refereeing side where we can exchange ideas and initiatives and exchange views as well. And I think that'd be very healthy.
Is the disciplinary committee is giving out sanctions during the week that sends the message that the referee on the field didn't take the proper decision. Is that affecting the referee's performance evaluation, and how?
The honest answer is yes, it does affect the referee. Nobody wants to be told something that they've missed. Nobody wants to be told that they haven't done the job correctly in any profession. And refereeing is the same as any profession, really. You know, we want to do the best job we can. And I should allude to the remark I made earlier. And my role really is to put the disciplinary committee out of function. That will never happen, I don't think. But that's the driver. And when we speak collectively every 2 weeks with the group of officials, yes, we do talk about some of the decisions made by the disciplinary committee. We don't necessarily agree with all those decisions by the disciplinary committee, by the way, but that's down to them. But we do talk about them, and we do understand in the majority of cases where their decisions come from, and there's a few that we don't necessarily agree with.
Peter, I spoke to one player this week who said that given the way that things are being called this season, and especially in terms of tackles that could be seen as endangering the safety of your opponent, his quote was, I think guys are starting to milk it now a little bit. When you talk to the players in pre-season, was simulation part of this discussion? Obviously, Real Madrid's Marcelo is in hot water after his antics this week, but is there any concern that if such fouls are being called more stringently, that some players might try and play it up a little bit?
No, these questions are very good, by the way, and they're cutting. So let me come straight to the point here. Players have a responsibility themselves, and we did speak to players about this in pre-season and in previous pre-season. They do have a responsibility themselves. It is not the referee's mandate to see if the player is play active or not. And sometimes players do embellish, and we can all see that. Is that embellishment being increased because of the way the referees are refereeing the game? I don't think so. I haven't detected that, and I'd like to think that won't happen. I'm not naive enough to realise that sometimes certain players do use that as a tactic, but so are referees. And our referees are every Friday briefed on the teams they're going to referee, the players they're going to referee. They understand the environment they're going in. They understand the various players, and so they should have some back knowledge of the games they're going in. In terms of players and your pointed question about do they milk it, I don't think they do, but we are cognizant of the fact that could be a consequence, could form a consequence of where we are today, and something we need to be quite mindful of.
Who to be a referee? Get 'em off, get 'em up. With a whistle and a little dried up pea. It's no protection for all the things they throw. Toilet rolls and bottles every time I blow.
So Peter Walton from Pro there. I know it was a long piece that we put in. I just felt it was important, as I said, that fans get to hear the referee's side of it and exactly what they're looking for this year. So some of the key points from that, he's talking about how this isn't new. That this has been the mandate for the referees since 2012, he was saying. And that it's just that the referees are now officiating it in a better way and putting it into practice in a better way. He also acknowledged the fact that other leagues around the world aren't sending off for some of the tackles that MLS are. He actually feels that MLS referees are following the letter of the law and that referees in leagues elsewhere aren't. And perhaps one of the biggest things that he said there was MLS and the pro referees, they're not going to change. And he feels it's up to the players to adapt and to change. Yet in saying that, you look at the weekend's games, and we talked about it in the podcast last week, we had heard that the referees were going to rein it back a little bit, and you did definitely see it in the games over the weekend. There were a number of tackles that went relatively unpunished during the game. There was Morrow's tackle on Gershon Kofi, Acosta's tackle in the Dallas San Jose game, and of course the tackle that everyone's talking about.
Nigel de Jong's, yeah.
Nigel de Jong with a horrible tackle on Darlington Nagbe, a tackle which he said afterwards was 50-50.
Yeah, and then don't forget the one in WFC2 where there was that tackle. And the referee, we should talk about that, the referee in WFC2 game didn't send anybody off, even though there was many instances and many shouts for penalties as well. So maybe the trickle-down effect happened all the way down to USL.
Yeah, it was funny. Like, we're talking about Will Seymour's tackle in the second half on one of the Sacramento players. He went in hard, and we were sitting in amongst the Whitecaps players, and we won't say which players we were talking to, but there was two players we were joking with about what the effects of that tackle would have been if it was in MLS.
Yeah, they said that like basically Disco would have been maybe a 2-game suspension, a major fine, and other sanctions against the player. So it was they were very funny. It was very tongue in cheek there.
So we'll see what happens with the referees going forward, and it doesn't sound like they're going to change, but it is killing the game. Peter Walton doesn't feel it is, but it's hard to say that it's not.
Yeah, I think what they're doing is they're trying to get this hopefully get through this short-term effect of it killing the game and maybe it opening up. But in the past, if you look at other sports, when other sports have been they try to really clamp down on fouls and wherever the fouls are. It doesn't, honestly. It doesn't. The players still seem to do it. All this stuff is reactionary when you're training from a young age at like 7 or 8, and when you start tackling, maybe I think age 10 they start tackling like that, where they go to ground more. It's embedded in them, so there's no way you can get that out. And I think, and that's maybe a question we should ask residency coaches as well. Are you going to start coaching players differently and try to get them to stay on their feet instead of going to ground as much as they do?
And one of the other things Walton said was the players were all briefed before the season started. They didn't seem to have any problems with it. He's going to speak to a selection of the players as well over the course of the season. The feedback from a lot of the players on social media, as we talked about last week, I mean, I think that's probably what spurred Pro into doing these calls. We'll see what happens. We don't want to be talking about referees every week. They don't want us to be talking about them. It's just how it is at the moment, but let's just hope that the Whitecaps can at least go a few more games now without any suspensions coming up.
And just one last thing I just wanted to say on that is I'd rather have the referees not do the red cards. I'd rather have disciplinary afterwards. If you do that and not show as many red cards during the game, it lets the game flow a little bit better, and at least you know that it's going to be an even game and back and forth and stuff like that. Nobody's going to clamp down if they're reduced to 10 men.
Well, I think this week that's exactly what's going to happen. I think we're going to see quite a lot of subsequent red cards handed out by Disco, but I think we can all agree anyway that Disco sucks.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it for this episode of the podcast. As always, thanks for listening. Just before we go, Steve, let everyone know where they can find you online.
You can find me on Twitter at WhitecapsBeat.
And I'm Michael McCall. You can find me on Twitter at AFTN Canada. Read all our stuff away from the numbers, aftn.ca. I'm also the Whitecaps beat reporter for MLSsoccer.com, and I'm also writing some stuff on the Whitecaps and West Coast and Canadian teams for USLsoccer.com, so check out my stuff there as well. So until next time, all that's left to say is let's hope the Whitecaps can find their goal-scoring boots down in Utah, and as always, mon the Caps.
Going to your first match is an experience you never forget. The atmosphere of what's going on around the pitch looks beautiful, and you always look and go, wow, I'd love to play here one day. If you get the bug, it's going to stay with you for life.